Well, today we're going to do a new Iron Tailor project. I've been wanting to do a steampunk combat medic. Not really sure where I'm going with this, but one of the things I wanted to do was steal our Bandolier idea and have a strap running across the chest. And on this, I would like to have rolled gauze. So this is a box of a dozen 3-inch by 4-yard rolled gauze, and I would just like to put a series of them. I don't know, I'll use the whole dozen, but have it looking something like that. Okay. Now I've got kind of white on white going on here. In my actual outfit I'll be having a khaki shirt, maybe a red shirt, I'm still working it out, but to have the little bandolier doing this, that'd be fabulous. Now I've done bandoliers in the past, but I realize I've never shown you how you actually sew one up, because I keep saying, oh, it's simple, you just sew these two pieces together and boom, you're there. So we're starting with a canvas belt. I get these at Daiso, which is kind of like the Japanese version of our dollar store. So for $1.50 I can get these. They're about a 38-inch waist. I don't really care because I'm using them most of the time as straps and bandoliers and whatnot. And because not big enough to go completely around me, I have a pair of them. So I'll only sew to one, the other one will be blank in the back. Nice thing about this is I can sew a bunch of different bandoliers like this, use the same blank one for the back, keep switching them up. Saves me $1.50 every time I do this. I'm going to use a 1-inch standard white elastic. In fact, this somehow got stained, but that's not going to be a problem because I don't want this to be white. I'd like it to be the same khaki color as the belts. So really the first thing we need to do is brew up a cup of tea. So this could be any tea you want. I'm using some Earl Grey. It just has to be real tea. Can't be herbal, can't be like red African tea. It needs to have honest to goodness tea leaves in it, a good dark tea, English breakfast, standard Lipton's tea, anything like that is wonderful. Just brew yourself up that nice deep cup of tea. So mine is dark enough it looks a little bit like coffee. Then take your elastic. Now I'm figuring that I want this piece to be about this long. So that's about as much as I want showing on the bandolier. So I'm going to start with this piece I had, again, a little bit stained, but I'm going to stain it some more. So I'm just going to loosely wrap it up. And in the cup of tea it goes. Just make sure it's completely covered. Ooh. Don't burn myself. And now we're going to wait, probably 5 minutes and just let that seep and pick up some color. Okay, so we did 1 tea dye. Now you could let this go overnight, then you could let it naturally dry, you could throw it in the dryer to dry it. I just went ahead and ran an iron over it. And that dried it real fast because what am I, patient? It didn't get quite as dark as the belt, but it's considerably darker than the bright white ribbon because it started out the same color as the bandage. So I'm okay with this. I'm pretty happy with it. Now for figuring out where this goes, I'm going to put this buckle on my shoulder and just kind of mark on my chest where I'd like the first piece to be. So if that's the spot, I'm going to take this. Good. That was my spot, and I'm going to put the piece on so it's running up towards the buckle. Now that may not make sense, but once I sew this, I'll flop it back. It'll give me a nice clean edge to start. So I've got to finish threading my sewing machine. I've got off-white thread that will match the khaki color of the belt better than a plain white would. Now this does not take super sewing skills. I'm using a straight stitch. I'm not doing anything fancy on this. You know, I've got a fancy machine here that can do a whole bunch of different fancy stitches, and I rarely ever use anything other than straight stitch or zigzag. Okay, I'm on straight stitch, so here we go. Just going back and forth a few times. The end ones take most of the stress, so I'm hitting them with a few more stitches than they probably would for later ones. So now I take a piece and I go over it. And I see about where I want it. I'm going to pull this out, and then I'm going to shorten it up a little. I want to put a little tension on this so it'll grip a little firmer. So that's where I want it, right where my thumb is. So you can tell this does not have to be real accurate. Back and forth a couple of times. Now I could very carefully measure that and do my layout and, you know, be very precise with it. I don't need to. If it's a little bit off, it makes it look like it was done in the field by hand, so that's kind of fun too. A lot of the degree of finish you're doing depends on just your own personal ethic. I like this stuff to look like, you know, we had to make it in the field. It didn't come out of a factory, or it's a prototype. So that's in there nice and firm. Now, eventually the elastic's going to lose some of its springiness. When it does, take this, put another stitch right there, that'll tighten the loop up a little bit. And even though you're running underneath the object you're holding a little bit, it won't really matter. It'll be hidden by the object. So I can now shift that down to the next spot. Make my mark, cheat down a little bit. That's all I'm going to keep doing. Now again, those loops don't look like they're exactly the same size. It won't matter. Once I have my pieces in there, the ones that are a little small will stretch a little. The ones that are a little big don't have to stretch as much. In fact, I may have to go in there and tighten them up a little bit. So I'm going to keep doing this until I run out of elastic, and we'll see what it looks like then. Okay, I'm to the last loop. And I want to have a nice finished edge like I did at the top. So I put my piece in, I run down, and if I just sewed there, I'd have this exposed edge. So what I'm going to do instead is fold it under, cheat down a little, and rather than try to somehow turn this thing inside out and make work, I'm just going to sew right across that edge, and that'll hide everything underneath it. Again, if you've tucked this under the last piece a little bit, in fact I'm going to do that a little bit more, that roll of gauze is going to hide this anyway. So you can see, even though I do this kind of slapdash and not very precise, I still do a few tricks to make it finish out kind of nice. So that is the bandolier. You've got all the loops. They're surprisingly more even than you would have thought when I was doing them earlier. And I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I've got 11. Okay, that just happened to be how it worked out. I don't have to fill them all. If I wanted to shorten it, I could just use a seam ripper, pop it back to wherever I wanted, fold that in under it, and re-sew it. But I think I'm good with this. I'm going to go ahead now and fill this with the rest of my bandages. So here we are with the finished piece. I went ahead and put on the uniform jacket so you could see the contrast of the white bandages against the khaki shirt. And that was really something I wanted. I figured would give you a lot of impact. Reads well from a distance. You know, if I'm too far back, it's just a splash of white, which is interesting. As I get closer, you begin to see it's rolls of something. With all the other gear I'm going to use, I'm hoping that everything's pointing towards medic. I'm going to have the armbands. I'm going to have first aid bags, a lot of stuff. I could also break it up by putting something else in here. Anything that's roughly this diameter would fit, so I could use these little dark amber colored vials instead, like I have medicine. I could just do a couple of them and then go with bandages on the rest. Okay, so I have some options, things I can play with. Overall, I'm real pleased with this. About the only sneaky trick, as you see up at the top, I just put the tail end of the other belt through the buckle, and that hangs over the back, and you can put a little ponytail holder or something to hold that if you want. On this corner, tip down, I've got the connection, and this is the real secret. Instead of trying to come in from the end where it would bulge out, you put it in on the side like this. Now I do have a lot of extra material here. I can just fold it and let it run ragged. I could certainly cut it off if I wanted. I like the adjustability of being able to move it. So I may just hang this down. I think that's kind of nice. If not, I can certainly roll it up. And again, just pin it in place, probably with just a ponytail bungee, just to hold it there so that stays straight. If I really want this to stay in place, I put my belt over it. Okay, if I run this whole thing underneath my belt, now it's anchored and it's not going anywhere, and it makes it real easy to wear all day. If you put something heavier on this, you'll want to anchor it like that so it doesn't keep sliding forward and back. This is nice and lightweight, going to be comfortable to wear all day. I'm going to call it a success. So I hope that this helps you, just in case you did want to build one of these bandoliers and you were kind of scratching your head at my instructions. Hopefully this will give you a little better notion of just how to do it.